So there's a couple of small things that I didn't get around to covering yesterday. First of all, channel output patching. So if we're using a master group, in our case it's group 12, and group 12 is feeding the matrices to the PA, we need to tell our channels to go to group 12. So remember, it's inputs at the top and outputs down the bottom. So if I wanted kick, in, out, and snare top, bottom, and hat to go to the main group, I'd right click down the bottom and go, what group do I want? I want my stereo groups, and I want to patch them into the master. So for example, I'll go through to hi-hat. So these, our channels are now patched to the master. Now when we did our effects, those effects wouldn't be working because those return channels that come from the effects rack aren't actually patched anywhere. So I'm going to patch those two into the master. Now that's one scenario. So every channel goes to the master goes to the matrices, and the matrices feed the PA. Another scenario might be using groups as subgroups. So in that scenario, I might take these out of master. So I'm going to take those out of master. I'm going to put them into group 7. I'll show you why in a minute. Out of the master and out of the master. So I'll just check through those. So they're all now going to the group 7 and not to the master. Why? Because I'm going to use group 7 as a subgroup. So on surface 1, just going to expand that. Hit layer and go to my groups. And group 7 is now my drums. So we've got a drum group, and when that's at 0, that the drums pass through this group, and then we need to tell that group that it's going to the master. So if you're going to do subgroups, you've got to make sure you're not sending them both from the channel to the master and from the group to the master, because that's double busing. So in that case, we're going only through on the input side of things. Let's just bring this up quickly. Only to the drum group, and then in the drum group we are going then out to the master. The master then feeds the matrices, and the matrices feed the PA. The next thing I want to show you is control groups. Now you can kind of use these similar to mute groups, or you can use them as sort of old school VCAs, or you can use them as moving fader DCAs. So I'm going to narrow in on control group 1 here. So this is control group 1, and we're going to use this as a drum controller. So there's a couple of ways we can handle this. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to expand this, hide that snapshots view, and I'm going to assign all those drum channels to this control group. Now this is different to a subgroup. It's not passing any audio, it's just a controller that controls multiple channels. So I'm going to hit the join leave, and I'm going to select kick, in, out, top, bottom, hat, and rack, and then turn off my join leave. And you can see I've now got 6 members of my control group. So if I hit auto mute, this control group is effectively just a mute button. So hit that and I mute them. If I bring the fader up, nothing happens. If I take that off and select this button onto move fader, then this will actually move the faders up and down for the drums. They will all stay relative to each other, just like an old school VCA. If I click that and go VCA style, that will be more like VCAs used to be on an analog desk. It won't move the faders of the channels, but it will still have the same effect, keeping the level relative to each other as the level for the multiple channels goes down. So let's say, for example, for drums, I really just need a mute. So I'm going to use this as auto mute and make this mute only. And that now mutes my entire drum kit. But I want a quick way to get to it without switching layers. So what I'm going to do here is that is control group 1. I'm going to go to my master screen. I'm going to go set up macros. I'm going to create a new macro. I'm going to call it drum mute. And I'm going to mute a control group. So select control group from the left-hand side, and I'm going to pick mute control group 1 to control group 1, and I'm going to change its value instead of on or off to be a toggle. So when I assign it to my key, so in this case I'm going to go bank 1, key 1, that is now my drum mute, and that will be the drum mute on the console. When I hit that button, it will mute control group 1, which will in turn mute all the drum channels. All right, one last thing. When I was setting up those graphic EQs, I'm pretty sure I forgot to turn some of the inserts on. So those graphic EQs are over the matrices. So I want to bring up my matrix page and check my inserts. So it'll be insert A is on, and that's actually, we don't need one on the sub. On the infill, we need that on. So those graphic EQs are now in effect, and they're patched over those matrices. And we have a gang over the left and right 15 and 16 graphic, so that if we change a frequency on the left side, we're changing it on the right as well. Finally, I just wanted a quick walk through the channel strip. So I've just pulled up this page. This has got channel 37 right here. So we start at the top. We can right click to get our pad, our 48 volts, our input patching. There's a tube emulator in every channel, and we've got safes as well, so we can save things from scene recall. As we move down the channel strip, we've then got our high pass filter and low pass filter, which are variable. Then we've got our EQ. I'll just show you the EQ. So if I right click the EQ, on the console you can click and drag with your finger, move frequencies around very easily. We've got dynamics, so we've got our comp first on Digico. The comp comes with a graph page, so if you set your comp to multiband, I'm just going to set it to multiband, you actually see the graphical interface for all the bands, and then the gate as well. So I'm just going to close that graph. After that, you've got your insert path, so you can insert things directly over a channel. You can actually feed things in and out of the stage box or the console's local I/O, or your AES ports for inserts. Then we've got our auxiliaries. So if I wanted FX on channel 37, I would drive channel 37's aux fader up. There's a bunch of different ways you can run your aux levels. On the console, if you click and click again on the aux pot, you get this. This is similar to an analog. It's now channel 37 over to aux 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth. So you can go, oh, channel 37 is vocal 1. Where do I want to send it? I want to send it to these auxiliaries. You can also do sense fader just by selecting the aux page. So if I go to surface 2, and I bring up an aux, and I hit select on it, which is basically AFL, it will sense to fader automatically the console if the console's in its default settings page. So I'm just going to hide the master. Whoops, can't do that. I'm just going to bring that back up. Go through channel 13, and then further down we have pan, so left, center, right, mute, and hard mute. Now hard mute's really handy because there's some things that I want, I might be tracking a channel and I want it muted the whole time. I don't want to accidentally bring it into the mix, but I might want the fader up. So you can use second function on the console to hard mute channels. And then your mute button won't actually unmute it. Second function applies to a few different things. For example, on here, see where I'm clicking, I can go, my aux send is pre-fade, pre-mute, or post-fade. On on the console, you can either use a second function and the function button under the channel, or you can use the mouse. When I'm mixing on the board, I very, very rarely use the mouse, and the keyboard kind of gets put away once everything's labeled. So everything can be done through the console. And one last thing, finally, I thought might be worth mentioning is just on the input patch, you can actually have an alternative input which you can switch to. So you could have a main input could be a vocal line on stage, and then you can switch to out input. I'm just going to create an out input here. Let's make it an internal, make it out input channel 1. So that when I'm on the console, I can actually switch to alt. So you might have two things plugged in into the box at different places, and they can both be brought up in the same channel. Now that can be really handy, especially for things like backup mics. So I might have a backup vocal mic plugged into another stage box channel, and I'll run it on the alt channel so that if I switch to it, all the EQ, the gain, the reverb, the aux send settings, they're all the same because effectively they are the same channel. Finally, I just wanted to show you the actual channel button. So by default, it is a PFL, but it can do a lot more than just PFL. Now, at the moment, it looks like it's in sends to fader mode. I'm just going to switch to my aux quickly. Deselect aux 1. Now that channel's not in sends to fader mode. It's in a normal channel mode. Now, say for example, I wanted to solo channel 1. Well, by default it's solo, but I could go and do something else. I could go, I want to move some faders around. So go LCD function, move faders, and I want 13 to move to 14. And then turn LCD back onto solo. So the functions that you've got available to you through that LCD button are not just solo. There's a whole bunch of things you can do. Something that I commonly do is channels I'm not using, I'll just unassign. So maybe I'm not using that one and that one, and then I'll go back to solo. So now I've got spaces where I'm not actually mixing, so it's easier on the eyes, and I can focus in on what I need to do. Also, any channel can come in anywhere, and you can build your own custom layouts on Digico, pretty much on any page. The last thing to mention is these layer buttons here. So this particular surface 1 on layer 1 has 13 to 24 and 37 to 48, and then if I flip to the second layer, it's got groups of control groups. It doesn't have to be that way, you can change it. So you can do surface 1, so let's go to layout, let's go to fader banks. This is now the left bunch of fader banks. Instead of groups and control groups, I could copy auxes and stick that there, or I could use the third layer and I could put channel 13 to 24. So I'm going to copy that to there. The other thing you can do is if you lose channels and you need to repopulate them, so I'm going to go back to that page I was on before, which was, I'm trying to remember which channels I got rid of. There. So this is now all messed up. This doesn't make sense. So we can actually fix this, and we can fix it from the master screen. So if I bring up the master screen and I go, well, what is that channel supposed to be? So this is 13. So that one there is supposed to be 13. So from the master screen, if I go layout channel list, expand my inputs, and then I'm going to go LC. I'm just going to move this over a bit. We go LCD function. I'm going to assign fader. I'm going to assign 13 to that channel and 14 to that channel. Whoop. That channel to 14. And let's do 15, let's do 16. So that channel gets 16 and that channel gets 17. So now I've got 13, 14, I've got 13 again, so I need to move a couple of these around. So I'm going to make this one here 15. So we're going to go 15 is there, 16 is there, 17, 18, 19. So this got all messed up when I did the channel swap. That one there should be 24. That should be 23. 22, 21. Okay, so that all makes sense again. And so if you do mess things up using move faders or swap faders, you can always rebuild it by going back to your channel list, which always maintains its 1 through 48 count, or 1 through 96, depending on how many channels you're running. All right, that's it for today.